a beautiful night in the hood. It's a beautiful night in the hood. Gonna be hanging out in the hood.
Hi, welcome to Almost Cooperstown.
I'm Mark.
And this is Gordon, and we love talking about baseball. So we're back again this week to talk about, filling out the rest of our Hall of Fame ballot. Well, our expansion Hall of Fame ballot, so to speak. Last week we went through 18 guys. And this week we're kind of here back to look at 18 more to add into the Hall of Fame.
We're going to try.
We're going to try, yeah. And I mean, just to kind of go back to the numbers, if you just want to look at it. The NBA Hall of Fame has 178 players out of the roughly 4,400 that have played the game. So that's about 4%. NFL is actually much less. It's 346 out of the 23,000.
No, 26,
almost 27,000. So
right,
they're
right.
only like 1.3%. So they're about in line with where baseball is. Hockey's at the 289 out of roughly 8,000. So they're at about 3.6%. And Major League Baseball is at 263 out of the 23,500 players, not counting.
No, that includes the Negro League players.
Right, so that's about 1.1. If all of the three people in the Hall of Fame are counted, it's about 1.4.
So that's all your managers and your umpires and your executives.
So you don't really need to add that many people to make this more equitable.
Right, and we had something sent in by a fan of the show, Scott Myers, thank you, talking about how over time there are fewer and fewer active Hall of Fame players that are playing, and that's just a statistical fact, at any one time compared to what used to be the case.
Now, this is in part because since the Hall of Fame wasn't something that always existed, you had to go back through time and add guys,
and pick those guys up,
which would increase the number of guys. But when you think about it, it doesn't really make sense that, there's less Hall of Fame level talent now playing. I'm pretty sure if we took half of certain guys back now that were really good players, they'd be even better players 50 years ago.
I think, like you said off air, it's probably an episode unto itself we could go into. So the point being that having the 1.25%, look, we're just picking a number here that seems that's going to sustain over time, because chances are we say at this we're going to get 2 to 3 Hall of Fame players a year, or 5 in 2 years you should get in order to keep the current rate.
Now, I think if you're going to look at these next 18 guys that we'd be adding in, I think there's 2 groups of players, and not obviously trying to equate them in any way, but there's 2 distinct groups of players that you need to look at and pull from, because they should be in right now, and we just have neglected adding both of them for different reasons. One of those, I'd say, are the ball players from the Negro Leagues. They're now counted as part of it. They're now eligible, and we will likely see them get included at a much higher rate going forward. But there's still not enough, and there's probably a slew of guys that should be in, and we're not going to be able to add all of them quickly enough.
No, and not only that. So the premise here is that we're going to add some Negro League ball players based upon stuff that we've gone back and read about. There's not enough statistics to really understand how long these Negro players actually play, because they didn't record the game. So you might have partial statistics for players, even though they played in the Negro Leagues without having stuff recorded. Right. It's very difficult. The guy was a great player, and you just don't have the stats.
Minnie Minoso, who actually did make it over into the major leagues before he was one of the first players, along with Jackie Robinson. Early. He was a fantastic player and was somebody that should really be celebrated as much as Jackie in some ways.
Overlooked a long time, and Minnie definitely. He's got a chance actually of getting in this year as well. Mm-hmm. And a couple of other names that I went back and found, and we talked about John Beckwith and William Bell. These were really good players that didn't have the 10 years in Major League Baseball that we use as the criteria for the Hall of Fame, because they didn't record games. So we're going to hold out 4 slots for Negro League players of our next 18, if you will.
For guys like these guys, because they deserve to be there. They're as much a part of baseball history as any of the Major League ball players.
And if we're using the 3,500 to expand our point to make it at 1.25%, we have to include those players in there, even if we don't know exactly who they are.
Right. Now, I will say this. Then you get into another strange group, which are not being included for a very different reason, and that is the PED guys who should be in there.
Well, and we've said
Some
that,
of them.
We've said that for a long time, right? They should be there on merit. So, and we're going to have David Gordon on the show, who wrote the book Baseball Generations we talked about in the prior episode, and his concept of career value index, and we'll get into that. But his one of the things he did that we really liked was he went and looked at those steroid guys, took the PED guys, I should say, not steroids,
and took 25% off the sum value of the years where they're suspected of being on steroids,
which hurts some players more than others.
Right. Bonds doesn't affect.
No, doesn't matter. So you want to we're dinging him, as we said in the last episode.
25% of his values through his unbelievable 2000s doesn't even come close to touching him.
And so Bonds gets under that premise.
Barry Bonds is a Hall of Famer. He might have been a Hall of Famer before all of that stuff happened.
Not might.
Yeah.
You know, how about guys that win 3 consecutive MVPs, which he did when he was with the Pirates before all this other stuff happened and all that. You know, they get into the Hall of Fame.
Right, exactly. Like the idea that he's not a Hall of Famer is just, it feels holier than thou almost.
100% agree.
Like, oh, we can't.
He's a cheater. Okay, we have acknowledged he's a cheater if you want to look at it that way by dinging him some statistics.
But
now,
everybody was cheating.
You can't just negate his entire career as if he didn't exist.
Right. How many guys that just weren't ever, since they weren't that good, nobody ever really paid attention to whether or not they were doing steroids. I bet there's a lot of those guys.
We don't even get into that. And I guess let's throw Clemens into that same.
Clemens is a Hall of Famer.
Because even with the dinging for steroids for the time thing, he is by far and away a Hall of Famer.
At the same time, can you really be a Hall of Fame pitcher if you failed to hit Mike Piazza with that bat from like 12 feet? I
thought it was a ball.
Look, I'm saying, if it was a ball, I expect my Hall of Fame pitchers to have better control than that.
Those memories. So yeah, those two guys go in, and then I guess you're going to talk about two other guys who traditionally have been eschewed from being inducted into Cooperstown, and that is the guy with the most hits.
Pete Rose. Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame.
And shoeless Joe Jackson. Now this is going to cause consternation for particularly a lot of let's call them historical baseball fans, right? Because
I feel like that's a generous.
I'm okay. Old people.
I'm glad you're the one giving that name, because I feel like I would have gone.
Well, because there's a romance about Joe Jackson that we've heard our whole lives, and there's a lot of people that have come out, and we had Gary Livicari on the show, and he wrote a book and then talked about the Black Sox, and what we said on the podcast when we had Gary on is Joe Jackson took the money. And so that, for some people, is the line that you can't cross to say, doesn't matter if you hit 351 in the World Series. You didn't do anything to help your team lose that was demonstrable. Because you took the money. So on this podcast, for us, Joe Jackson goes in our Hall of Fame because we're not going to go for that.
Granted, here's the thing. You could just start spinning pretty fantastical tales easily. If I work for a company and they put money in my bank account, and then I later find out that company is doing all kinds of terrible things on the side, am I going to be punished for that, even though I never directly participated in any of that? How much did Joe Jackson, did he know what he was taking money for? Because he didn't, considering he hit 351 in the series.
So he could have hit 640, but he only hit 350. Yeah,
exactly.
So
regardless, the guy still had a Hall, and I understand the idea is, you know what, maybe should his entire career be voided from baseball?
Right, that's the point.
For that one thing. The same way, if we want to throw out Pete Rose's managerial career because he bet on baseball when he was a manager, fine. Guess what? He's still a Hall of Fame player.
Right. And these, if you want to put like a Carter in the Hall of Fame where you have the controversial guys or guys, that's fine if you want to call special attention to their ignominy, if you will. At times,
have the infamous Hall. You can go put Clemens and Bonds and Pete Rose.
The Carter of infamy within the Hall of Fame.
Just go stick them off in their own little hallway. Everybody will know why they're there, but they're still in the Hall of Fame, and we're not going to pretend that they weren't Hall of Fame players anymore.
But let's give a preview, because there are other guys who fit into this category who were not advocating for Hall of Fame. In fact, the dinging that
really hurts
them, and it's a really good way of doing it.
Well, yeah, because it dings out the guys that we would otherwise consider probably compilers
or marginal Hall of Famers, however you want to put it.
Guys like Sosa, guys like McGuire, even guys like Palmeiro. When you really ding them for those steroid years, when they lose that 25% off of them, you realize, okay, yeah, they were just really good.
So here's what kills me in this, because you have to be fair about it. And a guy that I just feel like should be in the Hall of Fame gets dinged out of it, and because of his association with steroids and is Manny Ramirez. And it just bugs me when a guy hits 312 for his career and is probably one of the great 500 and
like one of the greatest
right-handed hitters
of
of all time. Yes, he was I'm trying to what kind of a fielder, a disinterested fielder a lot of the time in his career. I remember when he went out to left field with a bottle of water in his back pocket, and during the middle of an inning, he took a sip of water during the game. Just think, that's not a guy who's focused on defense.
No.
But Manny is dinged out of it, and so we're not putting him in. He could be argued another day.
Manny, I would sooner argue for Manny than I would argue for either McGwire or Sosa.
I would agree with you there.
That Manny was a superior offensive ball player to both of them, and I'd probably say a superior defensive player to both of them.
Yes, without a doubt. And Clemens, adjusted for steroids at 10% for the amount of career that he did, is still third for starting pitchers all time.
Yeah,
so come on,
Clemens should be in there. He shouldn't even blink.
So we're not going to put in, So
now, I am happy because
we're trying to be fair.
Now it does help us because it does keep out one of our guys that tends to end up on these lists, and that's Andy Pettitte.
Yeah, he didn't.
This does not help Andy Pettitte.
Did not help him either. And by the way, in Pettitte's case, he was trying to recover from an injury, but he apparently took the stuff, and so that's the dividing line.
Ryan Braun will never get a shot because he's associated with it now.
Yeah, and he was marginal. I think we've looked at his before. He's a marginal guy.
Marginal without that, but when you throw in the fact that now you're going to ding him 25% if you're looking at career value index, he's not got a shot.
And for those of you that look at Kevin Brown and some joke that he, heard him say that he did it for his entire career, or somebody talked about that, he is dinged for this performance, but he just still makes it over the mark.
I do want to make this argument. In a sense, this system actually rewards the better cheaters.
Okay.
Because we're punishing, you can only get dinged 25% if you got caught.
Right. Go on.
So if you didn't get, if what we're saying is, okay, the issue wasn't that they cheated. The issue is that they cheated poorly.
Or they got caught.
And they got caught. That's what I'm saying. You cheated poorly by getting caught, because all the other guys that cheated well and didn't get caught, they get all of their stats.
And we'll never know.
And we'll never know. So I think it's almost why, in a sense, you should either just apply the 25% blanket on anybody or just throw it out.
Well, I think, and David Gordon did a good job of trying to go into the years of the career because let's face it, if it happened before a certain time, they weren't even they weren't illegal.
Which is why Bonds comes out still looking absolutely fine, because he's got all of those years early in his career where you're saying, look, the steroids were not the difference on why Barry Bonds was an unbelievable baseball player. The same way, steroids was not the difference that Mark McGwire was an unbelievable home run hitter. Because I don't think he was on steroids when he was with the Bash Brothers in the late 80s. Maybe he was, but it doesn't look like
No, I don't
was.
believe that's the case either.
So the dude had power and could hit tons of home runs even before he started taking
and
them.
he was admittedly taking androstenedione when it was legal to be taken, but people still killed him for it after the fact.
The difference is I don't think Mark McGwire is a Hall of Famer.
On the numbers. Right. Hitting. I think his
60-something.
His on base was not great.
He was just a fantastic power hitter.
Right.
And with how exclusive we say, I think there are guys that hit for a lesser overall degree of power, like a Manny Ramirez, but we're just so much more a complete offensive ball player that you'd have to give them the nod before McGwire.
And also,
same for a Sosa.
We talk about postseason play, and in fact, David Gordon's Baseball Generation CVI does not reward postseason play, and we've always felt postseason can only add to a player's reputation. It can't take away.
Now,
if you have bad, it doesn't hurt you.
That is kind of a net.
But Manny Ramirez was a good postseason player, and that helps him all the more.
Because I think he had up until Altuve's chasing him for the most career postseason home runs.
Correct. Now he's in second place.
The fact that the guy has the most. Now, granted, that's because in part they added a whole bunch of games while he was playing, but not.
He's got 29 postseason home runs all time.
He was not playing when it was completely ridiculous yet.
Pretty close. Yeah, it's pretty close to now. There might have not been one extra wild card series.
One or two extra games. Yeah.
So let's review. We've got 4 players that we've added. We've got Pete Rose, we've got Joe Jackson, we've got Barry Bonds and Clemens, and the 4 Negro League players that we're going to not talk about specifically for right now.
We're halfway there.
So we've got another 10 players, and this is where it kind of gets interesting. So, just to review for a moment, this year in the Hall of Fame, then I think the ballots come out December 5th. The first year guys that come up that are going to be interesting are A-Rod. Will he get in? Well, we could be in that same conversation. We're not talking about evaluating these guys, just thinking about what's coming up,
right?
And who's going in,
because you can't pull from these guys to add them.
Jimmy Rollins is up. David Ortiz, Big Papi is up. I think he's going to get a lot of support. And Mark Teixeira, who had a better career than you think.
But still,
when you look at it, those are the most interesting, what I'd call first year. Though there are 26 guys coming up for the first time this year. So guys that are retired that aren't on the ballot because they haven't been out 5 years, that we think are going to get in without a doubt are Adrian Beltre, Ichiro, and the recently retired Buster Posey. I think all of those might be first ballot guys, frankly.
Those are guys that will almost certainly be in as soon as they are eligible to be in.
So you've got those pool of guys that are going to come up that could go in, and over time, remember, Beltre and Susie, they still have time to wait before they even come up on the ballot.
And there's still even guys behind them, like Miguel Cabrera, gonna be a Hall of Famer.
Well, those are the current players, right? You get Cabrera, and you got Pujols, and you got Yadier, who's got his final season. You've got Verlander, Schertz. All these guys are near the end of their career.
Kershaw.
Greinke. Joey Votto this year put himself, I think, in better.
So you've got a whole bunch of guys that are going to be in the conversation that are going to be coming up, but they would not. Those can't be part of the people you're adding in because they're going to be the people that keep it at that level going forward.
I'd put Utley and Beltran as two guys who are going to, when their turn comes up to be voted on, are going to be strong candidates. And we talked about Mike Trout as an active player. He's already a Hall of Famer by every stretch of the imagination.
Exactly.
We should be arguing down the road about guys. How about Cole Hamels? How about his career? How about Longoria? How about Chris Sale and Mookie Betts? And not yet enough time, but maybe those are the guys that we should be arguing.
Those are the guys
about.
that I think are going to come up and be the future. Should be the people that we're bickering over.
So when
Joe Mauer a Hall of Famer?
That's great. What a great place to start. So in my view, yes, Joe Mauer. Catcher for more than half of his career, which I thought he actually didn't even catch that much. So that's really strong. And if you go and you look at the stats, and we should probably talk about, he has the cred in terms of the what we like to say, those 5 seasons of 5 WAR plus.
Yep.
And he actually had a very good defensive career, which I kind of was surprised when. Remember, he didn't play but only half his career, at catcher. Let's see, his career 5 WAR seasons are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at catcher. His defensive work for his career is a positive 3.0.
So it sounds like he's a similar kind of guy to Posey.
Yeah, I'd say, except Posey won 3 World Series.
Exactly. And that's the difference between Posey and Mauer.
But Mauer hit 3.0. What he hit 306 for his career, 388 on base for his career, career ops plus of 124.
Pretty good for a catcher.
He won Gold Gloves at catcher 3 different times, 3 years in a row.
I think Mauer's the kind of guy that should probably be in there, especially if we're saying Posey's almost a slam dunk.
Right.
Mauer should be in.
Mauer's in.
If Posey's a slam dunk, Mauer should be in.
So definitely he goes in. And so I'll throw out some other names of guys because we can begin to argue because you're going to find it's kind of hard to get there with these guys. So we talked about Ken Boyer. He won the MVP, 1964. Really good long career. Are we going to put these guys in the parking? We're trying to get to a more inclusive Hall of Fame. It
almost gets hard because at a certain point, because of the standard that's been set for the type of player that belongs in the Hall of Fame, when we get down to this, where you're trying to pick these last 8 guys up, it gets hard because there's guys that you're just like, I I have room, but I don't have the bodies for it.
Right. So I said it was going to be tough maybe to get, to these next 18. So if let's say for a second, we put him aside and we put in Ken Boyer, and every baseball guy that I talk to thinks that the old shortstop, Bill Dahlin, has been passed over enough times, so we're not going to pass over Bill Dahlin, Dahlen.
So now you're at
He's
3.
going in the Hall of Fame.
So now you're at 3, so you got to get 5 more.
Right, and here's another name you've never heard of, Jack Glasscock. old-time baseball player, but we're trying to be a more inclusive Hall of Fame. We should bring some of these guys that have been talked about for a long time. Jack Glasscock, I'm suggesting would go in. We're still going to have trouble getting there. That's why I can go through this with some speed. A guy that comes up all the time, we already looked at his career last time, and Gary Livacari is a real push for Gil Hodges. And so when looking at Gil Hodges' career before Gold Gloves, had 300-plus home runs, really good fielder.
Yeah,
you were saying it seems like you're trying to put him in. You're forcing him in.
Right, but it feels like it's also when you have those guys that were before Gold Gloves, there's two issues. One, I don't know how you evaluate defensive WAR for guys for when you couldn't watch them play. Because I don't know how you can read a box score
Know about his range?
and know about his range.
Well, I'd imagine you had some metrics. That's a good question to ask for in defensive WAR in particular. But the idea is that Hodges, and here's the thing about players and managers. So Gil Hodges was a manager that won the World Series one time, but he didn't manage for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And so you don't get to combine his playing. This is a weird thing because in a sense, well, why not? If he's going in the Hall of Fame, if he went in as a player and a manager, who would care? Joe Torre could arguably be in the Hall of Fame as a player, but he went in as a manager. But his playing career was quite good, and certainly the sum total makes him a surefire Hall of Famer, but we can't count it that way.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I think because it makes more sense to me for the player that later becomes a manager and they mostly get in because of their managerial work. Because imagine if there was a guy that was a ho-hum player. He was a 240 hitter, not great on defense. And then he goes on and he's a bang-up manager. And you're going to put him in as a player and a manager. His playing career wasn't a Hall of Fame-worthy career. He was only Hall of Fame-worthy as a manager. So to put his playing career in the Hall of Fame is misrepresenting what he actually was.
I like that point. I like that point because I think it has validity, and I'm going to bring up a guy right now who would sort of fall into that category. Yeah. He's managing the Houston Astros right now. He just got picked up again.
Dusty Baker.
So Dusty Baker has a chance now that he's going to manage another year to win 2,000 games, and every manager except for Bruce Bochy, who will be inducted, who's won 2,000 games as a manager, is in the Hall of Fame. But before this season, you wouldn't have thought of necessarily as Dusty mad. For whatever reason, he always kind of fell short or whatnot. And even though they did this year, I think he got a lot of respect as a manager. And maybe because he's just in his 70s, in his mid-70s now, and he's kind of cool with a toothpick and all that. So, but as a player, Dusty Baker had a very nice career, not a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah, very nice career. Very nice tells you everything.
Career
about
WAR
it.
37, 240 homers, 278 batting average, ops plus for his career of 116. That's a nice career. It in no way is it a Hall of Fame career. But if you add his manager, like this guy put a lot into baseball for his whole life.
But
does that not matter?
No, but he should go in on the thing is, I agree with keeping it separate because as soon as you cross that line. Because what happens if you a guy that gets in because he's 85% of a Hall of Fame player and 15% of a Hall of Fame manager? Like, how do you evaluate that?
I think this. If you try to put a number on it, it's going to be difficult if you're going to try to quantify it in terms of numbers.
That's the problem. Is that so? It just becomes
kind of quotients and stuff.
That's what I'm saying. Is that it just kind of becomes like a thing that you use because you have a guy that you like and feel like you should be in.
So let's, because in our when we did the last podcast, we looked at Gil Hodges and said, man, I really want to put Gil Hodges in the Hall of Fame. And we both said, just like we did with Bill Freehan, who I've got here too, going, it just seems like you're forcing it.
We're forcing it. And that's where I kind of feel like we're at now. When I'm looking at the rest of the guys that I'm going in there, like, am I going to, like, Oral Hershiser? I feel like I'm putting him in for that one season almost.
I think that's a fair thing to say, that he had this one amazing season and postseason. But
he had like a 3-year stretch where he was really good. But outside of that, he was a good pitcher.
Career whip of 126. 200 wins when it meant a little more than it does now. Let's leave it at that. 150 losses. What's
that career ERA?
The career ERA, it's 3.48. Probably not enough. So,
and you look at, she's got that set of years where he's a dominant top of the line pitcher for those years. But who is more of a Hall of Fame pitcher to you? Felix Hernandez or Earl Hershiser?
Hershiser.
Really?
Yeah, I guess, and I'm going to ding Felix for never being on a team that did anything where he had to pitch in a big game because that's his bad luck. He played for bad teams,
and he was loyal to his bad team.
So
we love rewarding players when they're loyal, but we punish them when they're loyal to a bad team. Should have he forced his way out of Seattle because I need to go somewhere for my career?
So this looks bad, right? This looks bad because we're not going to get there if we're going to go down this road. Because if I'm going to agree with you here, then the next guy I'm going to throw out, and let's look at his stats, is David Cone. Right? No, I have never thought that David Cone was a Hall of Famer.
Right, and I think the problem that you run into is that we're now running into what we kind of talked about last time, where we're now being the fuddy-duddies that are stuck in the mud going, oh, they're not a Hall of Famer.
So, but you're right, because we watched the guy play, too. So, and you probably didn't see Cone play too much, but enough that you
enough to be vaguely aware
So pitcher WAR doesn't matter, right? So pitcher WAR doesn't matter. So what kind of WAR for Cone career-wise?
35.
How about 62?
Pretty good.
Okay. Yeah, 194 wins, 126 losses, 3.46 ERA, just like Hershiser. He's like so similar.
A spitting image to Hershiser.
1.256 whip.
Yeah. So
right there.
Neither one. Those guys sound like Hall of very good pitchers.
He struck out 2,600 guys to 2,000 for Hershiser.
That's a big difference.
That kind of gets my attention there. So
He's got a perfect game.
Yeah, and Hershiser has the most scoreless innings. So
that's a push.
I don't think you want to put those kinds of things in there. So I might say that if we're going to go back, those two guys would almost have to go in together.
Just put them in because I'm almost putting them in just because it helps.
Let's see how close we can get to the number.
That gives us that would do 5, so we need 4 more, not 3, because we need 9.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 5 more. Yeah. 5 more.
5 more.
5 more.
Because we only had the 8. Yeah, you're right.
So now as we're reaching the guy that we had, and then we said, ooh, maybe he should be in last time. I think he's still on the ballot though, so he hasn't been passed over completely yet. So he's still up for vote. But we think so. And maybe I shouldn't include this guy because I don't think that counts. It would have been Abreu, but I don't think we're going to include him for right now. So a guy who's been passed over a million times, Buddy Bell. Buddy Bell, a third baseman, traditionally like Boyer, going, why isn't this guy in the Hall of Fame? I can't believe it. 3 generations have played. His dad played. David Bell is the manager in Chicago right now. Career WAR of 66. Buddy Bell, in this instance, probably should be in the Hall of Fame because we're trying to put it out. Let's see about his 5 WAR seasons. He had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so
he's over the line.
His career DWAR is 23.8.
That's pretty. You know what? And the thing is, who we put in that was similar to that? Yadier.
Yes.
Now Buddy Bell's not playing as premium
as third base, and we need third baseman.
So interestingly, my math was off with how many we needed because with Buddy Bell, we actually only need 2 more.
Okay, so I highlighted some other guys, and I know you can argue these guys now because we went to Jimmy Wynn. We talked about
now when you're at 16, now we're up to 60. Now like filling in these last 2 slots, we can afford to be a little pickier again.
And I think I remember looking through David Gordon's book and the other Evans we talk about, Darrell Evans.
We've mentioned him.
We talked about him. His career. Let's see about his 5 WAR seasons. Let's see. 1, 2. He's only got 2 over 5.
Ooh.
He's got a 4.9.
He's got a 4.9.
Okay, so that's kind
of
he's
gotta have a bunch of 4.9s and 4.8s.
D WAR is even, so he's neither. Okay, and so then you start to look at he's got the 414 home runs and then the 248 career batting average. Yeah, I just can't do it.
Kingman,
I can't
come
do
on
it.
down.
Oh, no, he was a better ball player than Dave Kingman.
But that's what I'm saying.
Don't get me started.
That's what I'm saying.
So yeah, I think that he's not going to be. We're not going to go with him. So we're kind of going down to guys that I had at the next level below. So Palmeiro doesn't win on CVI. His dinging puts him below.
We're already saying he wasn't in.
So now we're down to Sheffield. Oh, except that the dinging for
the
steroids
CVI kills him,
takes him out. So we took Pettit out for that same reason. We're down to what I think are 5 guys. Okay, 5 guys. You ready?
Or any of them.
Ready? We've talked about them before. So you mentioned him just a few minutes ago, Torrey Hunter.
No.
Okay, yeah. You don't have to look. You don't want to look at stats. You don't
Just gut reaction, no.
Okay. Should we look at stats? Should we do that just
sure.
to be fair to see?
We'll give our gut reaction and then take a look at stats.
Because the thing is it possible that he has more 5-war seasons than we think? Well, he should come up well in D-War.
Right, he should. Yeah, well, we think.
So, 17 seasons by you and me, 19 overall, because only he played 1 and 6 in his first 2 years. Career WAR of 50.7. Oh, it's going to be right there. It's just going to be right there.
It's going to be real.
Here's the thing. I'm wrong. Okay, so he only has 2 5-war seasons.
I thought that might happen.
And he has a bunch in the 4s.
Low 4s or high 4s?
Well, one in the high 4s and a couple in the low 4s. Yeah, just not.
What's the D WAR?
The D WAR is for his career.
I had a feeling this might happen. Is it low?
It's not as high as I
That's
expected
what I thought
it to
might
be.
happen.
4.0 for his career.
I'm not surprised because I've noticed that a lot of times the players sometimes that are known for their defense like this, they're not actually as good as what you remember them. What you remember more is that Torrey Hunter made a lot of flashy wall climbing plays, but like there was a lot of other plays he didn't make.
So, of course, Baseball Reference, and we're pulling these stats from. Thank you, Sean Foreman. You also list the guy's salary, and I guess you never talk about baseball player salaries because just without you don't know. It's like, what do you guess Torrey Hunter, who hasn't played since 2015, what was his career earnings?
Over $100 million,
$171 million. Torrey Hunter,
yeah,
and he is not going into our Hall of Fame.
I remember he signed a fat contract near the end of his career with the Angels.
$171 million.
Yep.
So, and so here's another player that we'll put on there, and that is Brett Saberhagen. So, we've talked about him before, and another guy right on the margin.
But when you look at the stats, it's just not there. Because I remember doing this. I remember having this conversation with you about Saberhagen.
His strongest stat, I'd say, would be a career whip of 1.14. That's good. Excellent for a starting pitcher. 1,700 career strikeouts speaks to the brief career because he got injured quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And so that's pretty important. And he had a career WAR of 59. And if you go to the other metric we use, he had 4 seasons of 5 seasons of 5 WAR.
Well, I'd say right now he would be my pole position guy for getting out of
this.
this.
Because we're having trouble getting to the number, I think is what really comes down to it.
He's also not the inventor of sabermetrics, just to be clear.
No, he's not. So there are 3 other guys we'll talk about, and we've mentioned before.
Yeah.
And, one of them is still doing broadcasting, Jim Kaat, Kaat, the big left-hander who has lots of wins in his career because he played at a time where pitchers
you got wins,
but doesn't have any other career stats that really. I really like the player. I'm just trying to pull him up here, but my tabs are a little slow. So he would be one of them. Rick Russell is another guy that we've talked about, being part of it, and maybe he would be there. And then the last guy is Sal Bando, and I think we went through him last time and thought he was marginal. So we got to pick 2 out of these guys.
Well, if we want to fill it out, I think
maybe we shouldn't.
I think we should put in Saberhagen and you leave the 18th spot open.
I think you're right.
Because I think ultimately in the end of the day, you're trying, I'm happy. I don't feel bad about any of the guys. So that it would be, the next 18 would be Shoeless Joe Jackson, Barry Bonds, Clemens, Pete Rose. And this it was about 5, it was an additional 4 Negro League players. We had Minnie Minoso.
We had William Bell. Well, we picked 4 players,
right?
And we said it could be more than that. It's going to be kind of replaceable because
Buck O'Neill, who was
Buck O'Neill not as a player though,
but he was one of the people going in.
Yeah,
and then we had John Beckwith and William Bell.
Right.
Besides Minnie Minoso.
So of those guys, that would be our pool to pull from to go into the Hall of Fame. We don't even have to name them necessarily.
Then we had Joe Mauer, Ken Boyer, Bill Dolan, Jack Glasscock, Gil Hodges, Oral Hershiser, David Cohn, Buddy Bell. rounding it out as Brett Saberhagen.
So that's instead of going with 18 this time. So we've got 35.
Yeah, we're one short.
That we're adding. And we went, I'd say you'd agree, we went pretty deep
We started going like, oh my God, I can't put that guy in.
So I think that's the way it should be, is you should be arguing about the guys that are like, is this guy really a Hall of Famer or not? I don't know why he's not in.
Yeah.
So, guys that are coming up, Helton's going to go in, when his time.
Right, but the guys that are coming up now are the guys that you're going to be counting on adding it going forward to keep the level up.
Right. Every 2 years, 5 guys would have to go in to sort of at least maintain the rate that we're at. So, we say Roland's going to go in when his time comes up. We say Helton's going to go in. These guys, are going to, and it's going to happen pretty quick because Ichiro, all those guys are first ballot.
This might help buoy it because it's like maybe there was just a weird gap because of like player ages and generations and how long ball players last, that like if you didn't have a lot of overlap, it seems like coming out of the late 90s and 2000s where you had a lot of guys went into the Hall of Fame in that time period. By the way, in no way do I think A-Rod is going to actually be voted into the Hall of Fame. Even though he should. I don't. I hope that he even stays on the ballot. There's such prejudice there that, I think sometimes that they might just ignore him because they just don't like him. Ortiz is in that same, Ortiz is liked, though. He's liked a lot more than A-Rod. And the biggest advantage he has is that Alex Rodriguez exists in the same time frame for him to take a lot of the heat off of him. But when we get through these guys, right, the A-Rods and the Ortiz, the Beltres, Ichiros, and Posies, all those guys getting in, the guys that are active, it's going to take a while for that to play out to get those 5 guys over 2 years. So I think this is going to work because there aren't as many. If you start you get these guys out of the league now, right, that are in the end of their careers that we talked about, the Cabreras and the Schertzers and all that, they retire sometime in the next couple of years. Kershaw. Right, and then we'll have new guys coming up. We'll have new guys, except that Betts will still be too early in his career to really be in that situation. You don't have that many active players that are like, well, he's definitely on a Hall of Famer. Think about it. Right, we have like 10-ish. Well, you're talking about. I'm talking about 3 years from now. But 3 years from now, you're going to have guys that are emerging that we're going to be talking about how they're going to be. You're going to go. Well, Juan Soto's on that track. Exactly. So I think it's less about that and more. We're trying to get that number up, and that's what this number, adding these 35 guys, will do. So our Hall of Fame now would have 298 players. Yeah, bringing us to like 1.25%, just like we want. Thanks for listening. Subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. And you can follow us on Twitter at Almost Coop.